I am joined by Alex McKinley. And Alex, can you believe it's been 2 years since we've introduced Wishclaw Talisman into the Epic Storm?
It's crazy. It feels like it's been forever that we've been casting Wishclaw Talismans. Like, I don't even remember what holding control for an Infernal Tutor looks like.
It feels weird, trust me. I've done it a few times for some donation decks playing Ant. It's not second nature anymore. It's definitely uncomfortable.
Yeah. It's crazy that looking at, I guess, this deck list in front of us, 8-3, this is what was stock a couple years ago coming out of the Ren and 6 meta.
This is actually pretty close to what I played. In fact, this might be what I played at Grand Prix Atlanta, the Magic Fast Grand Prix. I don't remember actually which one it was called. That Cyrus Corman Gill won with Ad Nauseam Tendrils.
Yeah, wow. Thoughtseize, Duress, no Veil of Summers.
Yeah.
Only one Echo on the sideboard. Like, we've come a long way. Only 3 colors, wow.
I used to love this mana base for what it's worth. Just having 2 basics always felt so good. But Veil of Summer and now Orm's Chant are definitely worth it. But let's not get ahead of ourselves, Alex. I want to go back to 2 years ago. That's the whole point of this video. And I don't know if you remember what happened, but I'm about to describe it. So that night, it's Wednesday, the night before Thanksgiving, and I played 3 leagues by myself, and I was just getting slaughtered. So at the time, I had done a lot of experimentation with Mox Opal. 7-5 was a pretty big breakthrough list. It was the first list that I really did well with Mox Opal, but it never felt consistent. Like, we never had enough artifacts to truly make it work. If you look at this deck list, we have 8, 6, 14, 15 artifacts. It's kind of low for Mox Opal. We're not quite vintage where our Lotus Petals and our Lion's Eye Diamonds stick around. Even vintage Paradoxical Outcome plays more artifacts for Mox Opal. So here we are running a little bit on the slim side. And at the time, I'm sure you can go back and listen to the Eternal Glory podcast or other videos or articles I wrote. I said Mox Opal was the future of the Epic Storm. Alex, do you remember me saying that?
I do remember saying that. I remember you trying some crazy things like main deck Hope of Gearper. I was not a big believer, but I was also not very good at Magic at the time, so I didn't quite see the potential. So
yeah, I remember a comment that Ari Lax made to Jarvis U about how crazy it was that Mox Opal wasn't seeing play in Legacy Storm decks. And to me, that stuck in my head. I was already messing with Mox Opal, but it was just the fire I needed to, push even further. And that night, I think, I don't remember my exact record. I could probably look it up in the spreadsheet, but it was terrible. It was just miserable. And at sometime around midnight, I just, I decided I was done playing Magic, and I just loaded this screen that we see in front of us at this very moment. And I started staring at the deck list, and I was thinking to myself, so the future of this deck is Mox Opal. How do we make Mox Opal work? And I started, dragging cards around. And Alex, do you remember an article you wrote for the Epic Storm?
I do. I wrote about a card called Wishclaw Talisman.
Here it is. Here's that very article.
Yeah, so in private discussions, I was very hyped about this card. I was like, this could be a cute one-of. This card is probably playable. I played with it a little bit. I got to do, at the time what I called was double tutor plays, where you got to find your protection piece or whatever else off the Wishclaw Talisman. I proposed playing one of them to help with Mox Opal. I have but Bryant was kind of down on the card. Didn't think it fit. Was more mana than Infernal Tutor. It didn't work with Empty the Warrens, which is something that the Epic Storm used to be very, very focused on. And so I have this line here that Wishclaw Talisman does not fundamentally change or break the Epic Storm.
Wow!
That's potentially the second most wrong I've ever been in a card review article.
Yeah, we don't need to go that far into it. Alex, we appreciate you, and you're taking stabs at reviews. I wouldn't let it bother you that you were wrong about Wishclaw Talisman. I was also wrong about Wishclaw Talisman, but we're about to describe why. So when we look at this deck that we're trying to jam artifacts into, well, we need more artifacts to make it work. So when I started dragging cards around, the first thing I did was I went to this card tab and I typed in Wishclaw Talisman. So I started adding in 1, and I'm like, okay, well, how can I add in 1? Do I go down a protection spell down to 6? I was like, well, maybe I cut a Duress. So I cut a Duress at the time. And I was like, well, maybe that's not good enough. And I was like, well, what if instead I run no duress and instead I run 2 Wishclaws? And I was like, is 10 tutors too many? But I was in the back of my head, I was so concerned about this empty the warrens not working well. It was a big problem. And I was like, you know what? This isn't going to work. And then it dawned on me, well, what if I play a 3-3 split with Infernal Tutor? And I was like, the mana cost is still too high in this deck. And I eventually got to this. And I tried this in a league, and I was like, wow, Infernal Tutor is the worst card in the deck. And I then went and I cut Infernal Tutor, and I think I added in another defense grid like this, and maybe... I don't remember what it was, but it's something along these lines. At the end of the night, Alex...
It might have been the Chain of Vapor. I think it... that seems familiar.
Okay.
Because if you look at this shell is what the Epic Storm is. It's 8 tutors, 6 protection spells, the rituals, the cantrips, and the artifacts, and the same land count. The only thing that's missing that changes between this and modern TS in terms of how the slots work out is the main deck Tendrils of Agony, and I guess the Empty Wardens becomes Echo.
Yeah. All right. So at the end of the night, I ended up playing the next list that I'm about to show you, and Alex, I was a little bit strung out of my mind at the time. So I had this revolution at midnight, okay? So I had lost 3 leagues already. And at like roughly 1:30 or 2 a.m., I decided I was going to play a league with this list. This is 8.4. This is what crazy sleep-deprived Bryant came up with at the time. And I don't know if you remember this, but I played this in a league that night. I went 4-1. And then before I went to bed, it must have been around 4 in the morning, I wrote a book. We have a private The Epic Storm chat, and I wrote a book in there. And it was probably 8 paragraphs long at the shortest. Like, it was a lot. And I posted this screenshot in there, with the description. Alex, I don't know if you remember what happened, but I woke up the next morning at around 10:30 or 11 a.m. my time, and there were 0 responses. I remember there was like 8 people that have viewed it, 0 responses. And my initial thought was, all right, well, I guess my idea sucks.
I probably wasn't awake at that point yet, because I'm 3 hours behind you on the West Coast. But I remember as soon as somebody started talking about it, it just blew up. Everybody was super excited to start testing and iterating, and there were a bunch of interesting ideas that people put forward. I think people put spirit guides in this deck, and a lot of other nonsense, but some good stuff eventually came out of it. We figured out pretty quickly that Thoughtseize plus Echo of Eons is a bit of a non-bow.
Well, hold on, before we get there. So
Okay.
You'll notice the mana base is the same, except we have 12 lands. We have 1 less fetch land. We cut a Scalding Tarn for our 4th copy of Mox. And the idea behind the 4th copy of Mox was we're an Echo of Eons deck now. One of the problems with this 8-3 hypothetical list is that Empty the Warrens and Wishclaw don't play well together. But Echo of Eons, you can get both halves of the combo. You can get either Lion's Eye Diamond or Echo with Wishclaw, and that was just a big fundamental change in the deck. And I decided that if we're going to be the best Echo of Aeons and Ad Nauseam deck possible, plus we're adding a 6-drop into our deck, we should be playing all 16 artifacts here. Plus the Wishclaws bring up us to 20, and then with 2 defense grid, that's 22 artifacts. 7 more artifacts than the previous list, which was just huge at the time. And this Echo, like, believe it or not, it completely revolutionized how we viewed the deck. And now, Alex, describe Thoughtseize.
Thoughtseize plus Echo became pretty clear that was a non-bow. Like, you Thoughtseize your opponent and you give them more cards. It didn't work.
Yeah.
But we were so stuck on the idea of you need to have 2 basics. I think that we were a little bit had a little bit of flashbacks to Ren and 6 era where you just got wastelanded every turn. And you needed to have these 2 basics. You needed to have a bunch of fetch lands, and that was just the requirements of being a good deck. I think a couple of things that we didn't realize at the time, because this deck does play very differently than 8-3. It's not as, you don't jam as much. You don't do the Black Belcher thing. That's not a goal. You have the time to grind and set up more protected kills. And also, people had no idea how to play against this, so people saw Wishclaw Talisman and had no idea how to respond.
That's
nonsense
very true.
brew is this?
So
you get a lot of free equity out of that.
This deck list was shared to the chat, and the chat helped me come up with this. I believe it was Max Carini Wonder Pro, and then Stefan
Mhm.
Schultz, who recently just won the Legacy Eternal weekend with Blue Red Delver. But Stefan and Max Carini were like, Bryant, you should really be playing Veil of Summer. Those two are the two that pushed me to start trying Veil of Summer, and this is what we came up with. Not terribly different. Alex just described why Thoughtseize didn't work, and here we are, essentially just swapping Thoughtseize with Veil of Summer, right?
Yep. And we had a lot of debate at the time about how to build the mana base, and just like, oh, in past years we played Bayou. That's how we build Bayou. I think at the time I was like advocating that Bayou kind of wasn't the land I wanted to play. And I came up with some nonsense tropical island, basic island mana base that I conned Bryant into playing into leaving the Legacy, which is a little bit further down the line.
I top
We
eighted
definitely
though.
had
I did top 8.
yeah, it worked out. It wasn't that bad. But there was definitely a main deck chain of vapor that flirted with this list because we were concerned about stuff like the Death and Taxes matchup. Even though Death and Taxes wasn't very good at the time because you could play the full Oko Rug Delver and Oko Snow, which were very big at the time. And Death and Taxes hadn't figured, and your companions hadn't been printed yet. And I don't think the Death and Taxes players had really accepted the gift that was Deafening Silence at the time.
That is certainly true. Well, that came out in the same set as Oko. Are we talking about that time period? Okay.
Yeah,
well,
I mean,
it's Wishclaw. Never mind. Ignore me. Ignore me.
Oko and Deafening Silence all in the same set. What a set of legacy bangers.
Yeah. So we have this list that was, and Alex, I think you would agree with me. This was essentially the list minus some sideboard changes. Like the sideboard flexed a little bit, but all the way up until we got to companions, every deck list was based on this. You'd swap a few cards out on the board, but they were all similar. And we, like some of the versions after this, we tried going back up to 4 empty, stuff like that, but like none of that really worked out. We just determined that if you're playing Wishclaw, the 4 of empty plan died. And when we got to playing companions, and I didn't load a companion deck list for you, I'm sorry, but we learned that main deck Tendrils of Agony was just beautiful. With Wishclaw Talisman, we learned that just having this in play meant that you had the longevity in any single game versus a blue deck because you just had the ability to get this uncounterable storm spell out of your main deck at any point and just blow them out of the water. So with the companion era, we got Tendrils. And Alex, you're going to remember this next deck list. Jumping quite a few numbers, this is the Epic Storm version 10.8. This is Alex Baby. Alex...
4 carpets.
4 copies of Carpet, but also Alex's redefined mana base. Alex was the big brain that created this Taiga King, Taiga, the Epic Storm mana base with his land calculator.
Yeah, I think that we figured out at some point that Bayou just didn't do things you wanted to do because you wanted so often to produce Jund mana on your combo turn, or at the very least green black. And Bayou doesn't do that. It doesn't because the land produces black or green mana. It was like it's a land that could tie the mana base together. Maybe if we were playing more lands, that would be a land I would consider. But when we're constricting the game to so few turns, and you have these 5-color rainbow lands in Opal and Petal to help out, you don't need the rainbow lands. You can just play a good, clean fetch dual land mana base, and you establish your Underground Senior Taiga, and you're off to the races. I think one other notable thing about this deck list is that you see the last copy of Infernal Tutor is just gone. It's Peer into the Abyss now. And Peer into the Abyss getting printed and us putting Carpet of Flowers back in the sideboard helped fix the Delver matchup, which was kind of a problem that was starting to appear when the Bug Delver was percolating in between the Renin 6 and Dreadhorde eras. That we just couldn't figure out how to beat the Delver matchup, and we kept going back to old tools and Empty the Warrens. But we just needed to look for different tools, and because the deck had fundamentally shifted. It took a long time to get out of the mindset that Infernal Tutor had left us in.
I would agree with that. We did try Empty List for a while, and Carpet was just the savior we needed, and we realized that we could beat Delver by just playing Haymaker after Haymaker after Haymaker. And what I'm describing is Defense Grid, Wishclaw Talisman, Burning Wish, Ad Nauseam, Echo. Our deck is just full of these super powerful cards, And Carpet allowed us to just overpower those Rug Delver Dreadhorde decks at the time, which was just really, really huge for 10.8. And every deck list after 10.8 looked like 10.8 for the most part, Alex, until we got to sort of what we're playing today. This is 12.5, and even 12.4 looks a little bit like 10.8, I think you would agree. It's really Modern Horizons 2 that created a shift in this deck.
Yeah, Modern Horizons 2, the two cards that are in this deck, Prismatic Ending and Galvanic Relay, are the reasons why things changed. Carpet of Flowers sucks in a Prismatic Ending meta where they have an answer to your Carpet, they have an answer to your Wishclaw, they have an answer to all these permanents you can put into play that they don't have to board out, and it's in their deck game 1, and it's not a dead card like Swords to Plowshares, and they're not spending infinite mana on it the way they would with a Council's Judgment or Disenchant. Galvanic, so that meant that Carpet of Flowers couldn't be a plan in the deck anymore. And Galvanic Relay was just this insane engine that
Necro!
you could just chain them into each other, and you would just overwhelm the blue decks with card advantage, which is kind of the way to do it because all their counterspells are 2-for-1 themselves.
Imagine if Ending didn't exist and we got to play 4 Carpet, 4 Relay. We would never lose the blue decks ever again.
Be something like that, yeah. I mean, we get to play Ending now ourselves because it turns out it's just a good removal spell, and the mana base can support it. And that's the other thing is that Prismatic Ending put pressure on Defense Grid, and it's like, okay, well, if we can't play Defense Grid, the next best effect is Silence, or Orim's Chant is a little bit better. If you want to see some of the ways why it's better, there's an Infernal Tutoring that's either about to be released or has been released with a very interesting Orim's Chant situation.
That's going to be released likely Monday next week. So keep your eye out. It will be out. But Alex, one of the things I want to highlight here, we only have 18 artifacts. That's 4 less than that initial 8.3 list because we were trying 4 of each Mox and 2 Defense Grid. Alex, have you felt a noticeable difference in Mox Opal with 12.5?
No. I think that Defense Grid didn't contribute as much to Metalcraft as we had originally thought. Because it's 2 mana. Like it's nice sometimes, like when you need to filter Wishclaw Talismans through after you resolve like an ad nauseam or something that happens to be your 3rd artifact, and you're already kind of going. But I think in terms of like playing out a bunch of artifacts, it's very rare that Wishclaw Talisman is your 3rd mana or 3rd artifact for Metalcraft, from what I've experienced.
Okay.
And then also the diminishing returns on Chromox and Mox Opal are so insane, and drawing multiples of either of them is like kind of not great, especially if you draw 3. Ugh.
We did try some lists for a while in between 10.8 and 12.5 where we had no copies of Rite of Flame, and that sort of just completely died once Galvanic Relay came out because Rite of Flame into Relay was just beautiful. It's everything we've wanted, and that kind of just solidified Rite of Flame's slot in the Epic Storm, and we just decided to stop messing around with these 8 Mox lists.
Yeah. We were playing stuff like Mishra's Bauble because it was Metalcraft, a bunch of other nonsense. We tried the Modern Horizons card, Strike It Rich, because we were at that point we were still not convinced that Rite of Flame was best card in the slot, and we hadn't really figured out that we should just be full on for Galvanic Relaying people.
I mean, I figured that out pretty early. Speak for yourself, Alex.
I don't know. The first couple of lists did not have 4 copies. There was like 3 and then the 4.
Okay. So let's hop on over to Google Chrome. We've already looked at this article. I want to show you a couple of other things here. So this is our homepage of the website. You get to see Alex's beautiful face twice right here. How to Beat Mindbreak Trap from last year, but still a very relevant article. If you haven't read that, go check that one out. And then we scroll down here. Look at this, 12.5. Still the same deck list we've been playing since August. And then when I did this deck list was already like a few weeks old. We come down here, and in this sheet right here, you click on this, it's going to load our historical data spreadsheet. And in here, you can see all of the deck list from the beginning. Well, I shouldn't say the beginning. Since I started tracking data, which was the banning of Cincy's Top, all the way down to what we're playing today with 12.5. And if someone wants to spend time doing this, they can, but you could look at the difference between the win percentages between Wishclaw Talisman and Infernal Tutor, and I bet I haven't done it. I'm sorry, I don't have the time. But I bet that you'll find that the win percentage with Wishclaw is just dramatically higher. It's something that I've noticed in general. So you could definitely come in here, click on these, and it will load you the deck list. You can get every single version since, you know, the initial ones. And that's what I did in order to make these deck lists for the video earlier. And that's just 8.4. Alex, do you remember this article? The new Epic Storm.
It popped off on Reddit and social media. And, you know, it was kind of... I don't think I realized all the changes at the time. I don't think I quite realized how fundamental a shift away from Empty the Warrens and...
This one did have a Chain of Vapor in it. Maybe the deck list I loaded was wrong. Okay, we had a Rite of Flame on the board. The deck file that I loaded was incorrect. My bad.
Yeah,
sorry, viewers.
Some crazy stuff in there.
Sorry about that.
Sideboard Rite of Flame was something I never liked, but whatever. I think that the Chain of Vapor was just because we're worried about not having disruption for the non-blue decks.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody quite realized the difference between Infernal Tutor only being a combo piece or just finding another copy in your hand, or and Wishclaw Talisman being a true tutor, being able to find anything, being able to find stuff on the stack. I don't think we quite figured that out all the way. We knew most of it, but not truly enough.
I think
it takes time for people to fix things.
We knew the Veil trick. At least we did. I don't know if our opponents did, and that ended up with a lot of blowouts at the time, like a lot of blowouts. So that was something nice, but definitely go check this article. It will be linked. I'm sure a card already went by the top of the screen. And then the next article was using the Epic Storm data. Initially, with these Wishclaw builds, we were just getting annihilated by Bug Delver, and I was still searching for the answer at the time. I had tried some crazy stuff too, like sideboards with 4 copies of Echo in it, because if they're going to him you, you could just discard an Echo. That plan did not work. I just kept on losing to Surgical over and over. But this article describes the percentages. It covers all the deck lists. You can go check this out. But yeah, we had a bunch of really good articles at the time, and then that eventually, like about a month after, TES versus Ant 2020, and this was an article that also popped off on Reddit, where we really broke down the future of the Epic Storm versus Ant. And at the time, a lot of Ant stalwarts didn't believe it. They were just like, no, our deck is still better. Cyrus just won that Grand Prix a year ago. But how much can change in a year? Echo of Aeons was a really big shift. Wishclaw Talisman and Ad Nauseam Tendrils. I'm not trying to make fun of the deck. It's still a legacy deck that you can play. But the Epic Storm nowadays is just the de facto Storm deck. When people say Storm, they're talking about Rite of Flame.
Yeah, I do think that the Epic Storm does require a bunch of reps to play, just like Ant did. Neither of these decks are easy, and I think you see that in, to bring a little bit of current events into it, TS had an insane play rate, much above what I expected in Eternal Weekend. There was like 10 to 20 people playing TES in each event, which is kind of crazy, right? That's way more than you'd expect.
Yeah.
I don't believe most people did very well, but I think that's just a little bit of inexperience, and also I don't know, some people got unlucky.
So I will say this. Jordan, who's about to, well, I guess Jordan has joined our website team, has yet to publish the first article. It will be that Infernal Tutoring dropping on Monday. But Jordan came in 17th in one, and I came in 19th in another. That's not terrible. But the overall win rate of the deck on the weekend wasn't great, but a lot of that's inexperienced people with, you know, the free play accounts just jamming a deck they think is cool. And that's going to happen. And it happens across decks. So I'm not going to try to like use that as a major excuse, but I do think that perhaps that was a factor, especially when you do have a smaller play pool compared to something like Blue-Red Delver where they had tons of pilots.
Yeah, deck definitely takes a couple of weeks to get used to. Like, I think that that's one of the things you can see through this video is that we kept making mistakes in our deck building. We tried bad plans. We played incorrectly. We tried to play matchups at the wrong speed. I think that if we had figured out Carpet of Flowers within the first week, then we wouldn't have had a problem with those Bug Delver decks when they were a thing nearly as much.
I'd agree. But Alex, to rewind just a little bit, you mentioned that we played a lot of bad things. That's how you grow. A lot of people are just like,
Yep.
I don't want to play whatever because it seems bad. But if you don't try things, you're never going to learn. I was really hesitant to play Carpet of Flowers because I had so much experience trying to play it back during the Rug Delver era of 2011, 2012. And the Epic Storm changed a lot over the years, but I still had this opinion that Carpet was bad due to past memories. So it's always good to try things again because sometimes you're wrong, and I was wrong about Carpet. So definitely try things out, experiment. That's all great things to do.
Yeah, I think that's why you see sometimes younger players being the better innovators and cutting these uh, sacred cows that turns out they're not very good anymore and they've been obsoleted. Goodbye, Infernal Tutor, former sacred cow.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And then we lost Defense Grid. And when we came up with White, Alex and I were actually on a Discord call. And I was just like, well, what if we try Portable Hole? It's an artifact for Mox Opal. We tried Portable Hole for one league, and we were like, this should just be Prismatic Ending. And after that, off to the races, the Epic Storm changed. So trying out crazy ideas like Portable Hole can also lead to a good deck list like this.
Yeah, bad cards lead to good cards, or something like that, because you can figure out why the bad card is bad, and then you can identify a hole in your strategy. And there's been a lot of Magic cards printed. There's probably something that solves the problem you're looking to solve somewhere.
Probably. At least in a card pool as deep as Legacies, right?
Yeah, I mean, there might not be a rest in peace bear, but we got Galvanic Relay, Brainstorm. Decay is still kicking 10 years later.
Yeah, card's very good. So, Alex, do you have any final thoughts on 2 years of Wishclaw Talisman?
It's been great. I love Wishclaw Talisman. The card is so cool. I think it's an incredibly flavorful Magic card that turns out it just does exactly what we want it to do.
Yeah. I put a poll on Twitter about 2 months ago, I believe at this point, where I asked, do you think that this 5-color monstrosity, the Epic Storm, is better than the Empty the Warrens Black Belcher era where you had 4 Therapy, 4 Empty, 4 Probe? And this version got slaughtered in the results. Alex, I have the unpopular opinion. I think that this is the better version of the Epic Storm. I played a lot of the Empty the Warrens builds back then, and my win rate with this is just way higher, and I've won larger, more important events. I qualified for the Pro Tour in 2020 playing the Epic Storm version 10.8. And that's just not that. I also, in that weekend, I went something like 21-1 because I also won the Legacy Challenge the next day. These Wishclaw Talisman builds are just absolutely insane.
Yeah, I think I agree that this is more powerful. I think there's also a little bit of context around the around that version. I guess that it played a split era of top versus no top, so that's a consideration. But I think that this deck list would just slaughter any. If you had to like put that into 2017, this deck list just slaughters a lot of those decks. Like, could you imagine Grixis Delver trying to beat a Galvanic Relay?
I could. Those decks back then played a lot of Stifles, but we're not going to get into that. All right.
Yeah.
So anything else before we end the video?
I think that's everything. Ad Nauseam's great.
All right.
It's
well,
still great.
Viewers, thank you for tuning in to watch us talk about Wishclaw Talisman in the last 2 years. If you have any thoughts or comments, feel free to leave those in the comment section down below. You know, I will try to respond to all of them. We're not going to do too much shilling, but if you want to support us, definitely check out the links in the description. Alex is very active in our very free Discord. That link is also in the description, but if you become a member, you get access to the secret member section where we spoil early thoughts we're having, deck lists, stuff like that. So definitely go do that. And I think that's all I have to say. So, Alex, thank you for joining me. I love talking the Epic Storm with you. I'm sure we'll do it again very soon. And Ban Ragavan.
Yeah, Ban Ragavan. Thanks for the nostalgia trip, Bryant.
All right. Thanks, everyone. See ya. Hey, Brian Cook here. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please like and subscribe, but also follow the social media channels down below. If you want to support this content directly, I would recommend going to theepicstorm.com/shop. And if you need a little bit of assistance with the Epic Storm to get to that next level, I would recommend going to theepicstorm.com/tutoring. Don't worry, there's more great content coming right up.